I know you as the creative director that gave me my first big boy job after college, and you remember that young man.
Oh, I do remember that young man.
You took him and you forced him to use a Wacom tablet for video editing.
I
Still don't
think I
know if
took
I
away
can.
your mouse.
You took away my mouse and gave me a
It's like
tablet, man.
if you're gonna do this, you have to give me your mouse for a month.
Yeah, I ended up using that for 3 months, and I mean, I still wonder if I should take that back in the repertoire. Um, and of course, I always call you when I screw up websites. Let's not forget those times I've desperately been sweating over the phone, and you've just always been there to help, man, when I need it. So grateful to call your friend and grateful to have you on the podcast. So we'll hear about your trip to Japan, hopefully.
Yeah,
Are
I'm
we gonna
happy.
hear something about that?
I have many things to
And we'll
tell you
hear
about
that.
that. It was fun.
And yeah, and then hopefully for anyone listening, if you're a creative, maybe you'll learn a thing or two about your trajectory and your career and some ways you can approach that. So yeah, here we go, man. Let's jump in. So here, a quick warm up question. So just to get a little bit about you. So let's go right into the movies. What's your favorite movie
That
or
was the
top
question.
three? Let's go into that first because I'm curious.
That was the question that I had to think the most about. Because I don't know, I have like a favorite in each genre. And I had to sit and think about it. And none of my favorite movies are like these great works of art, though I do love all of them. So my three favorite movies are I love A Knight's Tale, like Heath Ledger. That movie makes me happy inside. It's one of those movies where like I can just watch it whenever. And it never gets old. It's not this great cinematic masterpiece, but like there's parts that make me laugh. There's parts where, because I'm a sucker for like a great, just cheesy hero flick. And he's just such a great hero, and it's dramatic and it's funny. And anyway, so that's one of my like constant rewatches.
That's a good one, man. Love that one.
One of my favorite more serious movies that I love is Man on Fire. Tony Scott directed it. It's got Denzel Washington in it and like a really young Dakota Fanning. It's the one where he plays like the ex-CIA guy he's like a alcoholic bodyguard, and then I don't know. I don't want to spoil it. Well,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
It's years and years ago, but the whole thing was shot like cross process on like reversal stock, like hand crank cameras in the middle of like downtown Brazil, not downtown, like in the middle of Brazil. Like there's stories where like they were being taken around by a guide to these areas where like some of these really serious kidnappings and things happen, and like they literally got jumped and like the bodyguards were freaking out and they had to like drop camera equipment and run. Like it was serious business. But that movie is gorgeous, and Denzel Washington is unbelievably menacing and epic in that movie, and I love that movie so much.
Dang. That's going to be a suggestion for me because I don't think I've seen that movie yet.
Oh dude,
So I'm
so
excited.
good.
And
Don't watch
we're
it with
kind of
your
in
kids.
this 2000s era movie watching binge right now. So anything
Yeah.
in that, I'm seeing 2004, so I'm into that. That sounds
Yeah,
like fun.
these are all like formative movies in my like late teens to 20s. And then my number 3 one is Tombstone. I have a soft spot in my heart for Tombstone because my dad and I loved that watching that movie together. We would both
Dude.
quote like, Val Kilmer as Doc Holliday is just brilliant. I wrote articles about like the amazing editing of some of the fight scenes in that movie.
Oh, dude.
Or not fight scenes, the shootout scenes in that movie. So like that whole movie is fantastic. Actually, really cool story. My sound design teacher in college was like the sound, I can't remember if he was the sound designer or the sound editor or whatever, but like he was like one of the lead sound guys on that movie, and so he like talked about the whole thing. It was like we had no idea it was going to be this like cult classic, and so it was really, really cool. He was also one of my
Dude.
favorite college teachers, despite not being a sound guy. He was amazing.
That might be one of the true works of art, man. I mean, just the writing alone, like not even getting into the technical aspect, like that's just like that one.
You
hit
tell
me.
him I'm coming, and hell's
Dude.
coming with me.
It's
Such a
so
good movie.
good. I've been dying for a rewatch. So now you got me wanting to, get a rewatch on the books. That's a good one. That's prime.
So I didn't.
That's prime.
I did not get my 3 movies together until I think maybe like an hour and a half ago, and that was when I like had it all. Like I was like, okay, these are the 3 that I would choose.
I'm glad I gave you that homework. That's because I love that you got a little bit of the feel good, you got a little bit of the action, and then you've got kind of that like I don't know. Tombstone feels like the best of all things almost.
It is.
It really
I mean, Doc Holliday, Val Kilmer is hilarious. You've got the super dramatic moments with Kurt Russell. I mean, it's just you have such a great villain. Like I don't know, everything about it's fantastic.
the actors just like blew me away in that movie for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they're great. Dude, so awesome. Well, I love that. Now tell me, so I mean, you kind of alluded a little bit to your schooling. Can you tell me about kind of your pathway, maybe before education and kind of into like what you studied and where you studied and all that? I'd love to kind of get that breakdown.
Yeah, so I got into doing creative stuff in like high school. Honestly, like serving with my youth group. One of the great things about like being super involved as a church is that they never have enough people to do the creative stuff, and so they will literally hand a highly irresponsible, stupid teenager several $1,000 camera and be like, "Hey, just go make stuff. It's cool. We'll figure it out later." So I did stupid videos for youth group, and then I like led the youth tech team, and then I ran camera for like the main service, and then became a director and did contract work for them all in like high school. And so by like sophomore in high school, I knew that I wanted to do film for a career, and so I just kind of kept diving into it. And so I went to Loyola Marymount University when I graduated high school, and went there. They had like the number 4 film program in the country, so they were killing it. They were doing a really good job. I looked at schools like USC, but like at least at the time, USC, they only did like 2 films a year, and everyone would work on these films, and so they were enormous, like Hollywood level productions. But you didn't really get to do your own stuff while you were there. And LMU was great because you got to, like, you did a junior level film, you did a senior level film, you could do an internship. So you just had a lot of opportunity to work on a lot of different films rather than everybody working on these same films. So I freaking loved it. Film school was amazing. I, regularly arranged my schedule so that I would only have classes either Monday through Thursday or Tuesday through Thursday, so that weekends were always free for film shoots, because Friday, Saturday, and Sunday was like prime, working on student film type stuff all the time. So I worked on a couple grad school films. I worked on a lot of undergrad films. So it was a lot of fun. I kind of ended up focusing in on post-production. I always knew that I wanted to like do editing, but I was capable on set. Quickly discovered that I really don't like being on set except for hanging out with people. So I actually ended up doing a lot more editing and color grading and stuff like that. And I TA'd special effects classes and all that kind of stuff for college. So that's my through school background.
Right. Did you, I had my share of like those student film, when you sit down and watch and you go, oh, like, this is going to be so cringe in like 6 months, Did you have anything
films
like
have
that?
a look. Oh yeah, are you
Yes,
kidding? Like, I can't even tell you how many times as I'm like hiring for filmmakers or film directors, and like the various churches that I've worked at, and like hiring someone who has like a bunch of student film work in their like their reel, and they're like filmmakers. Like, yes, man, like I can tell like what's a good student film, what's not, what's not going to be a good student film. But like it was student films like have this look, and so when you have someone who's applying to like lead the department and their entire reel is just so clearly the student film look, I'm like, yeah, you're probably not quite ready for it yet. You haven't graduated from idolizing everything that Quentin Tarantino does, or being into super deep art cinema and the inability to do anything that doesn't have like highly pretentious writing in it. Like student films just like have a look, and it's great for that. And I saw and worked on many, both a hilarious cringe and actually decent student film stuff. But
Congrats for getting a halfway
time.
decent one, man. Because
yes,
yeah, that's a diamond in the rough, bro.
it was. But yeah, film school was great. I loved it. It was. Yeah. I have zero. My only regret from college was not learning how to break dance, because my roommates were all break dancers. It has nothing to do with my actual college experience.
I would love to see you try. Do you have a minute?
I'm not. I am a 37-year-old man with 4 children, and yeah, I'm not about to do that. I will bust a hip.
If you break dance, it's on accident.
Yes, absolutely.
It's because you fell.
Now my college roommate, we were talking about Japan. He's actually in Japan like right now. He's the breakdancer, and he could probably still bust out some of that stuff. I could not. I did a lot of things around breakdancing. I filmed breakdancing at things. I edited breakdancing things. I did not learn how to do it myself.
Okay, so it's just knowing what you're good at, I guess, right? Knowing what you love, and you would rather do color grading than spin on your head. So that's fine.
What's funny is he's a professional colorist. Like he was gonna do other stuff. I was swearing that I fully expected to be a professional colorist, and just didn't work out because I graduated in a recession, and the only job that I could get was at a church, and it actually ended up being great, and it totally aligned. So like total God thing with that. But then he got into color grading because I was showing him how to do stuff on his film, and then now he's a professional colorist, which is hilarious to me.
That's amazing. Did you, I mean, obviously, yeah, you kind of launched into a career, and, you did some work in, commercial color and post-production, and then you've been in church world, obviously, quite a bit. So, I mean, you've been into this for a while now. Have you had any maybe thoughts around when you look at, say, people in the same field as you now, who maybe don't have a traditional, education in their craft? Like, have you seen a difference in terms of maybe quality or respect for the craft or anything like that between maybe people who are more self-taught and people who have had more of that traditional education background? Or do you have maybe even some leaning towards one or the other, or are you just kind of like all learning is good learning?
I think all learning is good learning. Most of what I have discovered, the difference between the two is, I mean, it can go either way. Maybe I would say is what I found the most productive about going to like film school and things like that had nothing to do with my actual like film skills. I don't know. I probably learned a little bit of cinematography and sound design just because those weren't the things that I had like focused on. But those, obviously, it's also like not what I went into. What I learned the most about was like, how do you work with people? Because you're still in that like safety net setting where you can work on a really terrible group project and it's okay. But also like you're working with people that like, you're not doing a terrible group project about, As I Lay Dying or some like terrible book that you really wish that you didn't have to read in high school. You're working on film stuff. And so, I think the advantage of going to like a traditional education film school is mostly going to be the safe space to learn how to work with others, and it's okay if you fail, right? That's what college is anyway. It's, adulthood with a safety net, and it's the same thing with collaboration. You're not at something where if this project fails, someone's out a whole bunch of money and you have a super pissed off client, you just, you might get a C on a project, and then no grades don't matter in college as long as you make it to the next class, so it doesn't matter. Those who I know who have been self-taught, usually their skills are just as good, because so much about the skill stuff, especially in creative work, is a little bit of raw talent coupled with, I'm so interested in this, I just spent all of my time learning how to do this, which you can totally do with YouTube or stumbling your way through it or just showing up on other people's sets and just absorbing everything. Like you can learn the skills yourself if you want to, but learning how to work with other talented people is a lot easier in college. And so they were ready to work on a team faster. Yeah, and then networking too. I didn't need the networking because I ended up in ministry, but had I stayed in Hollywood and worked in that era and not graduated in the middle of a recession, the networking is huge too. So that's especially, but that really only helps if you're in New York or LA for college. If you go to like some sort of film school in, I don't know, not one of those, or maybe Atlanta or Chicago, the networking is kind of but you're learning how to work with other people in a safer space. That's the big advantage that I saw.
Yeah. Well, and the space is changing so much even since I was in school in 2018 or 2017. And it's like,
right.
Because things like video production and filmmaking, it's become in a way this more democratized platform where, the people kind of have the vote more so than, say, the traditional powers that be who are like, we have the money, go make the thing. Like now you have any voice can be heard, and any talented person could put something together and put it out there, and potentially thousands or millions of people could see it. So
totally. And you can do it with your iPhone and CapCut, not, an Arri Alexa and having a full Avid or Resolve setup. Like, it's amazing what you can do.
And the dividends are insane. I mean, when you look at the traditional space, and I've noticed this more and more because I spent time in kind of also like, corporate marketing and things, and kind of saw just the numbers around. Oh my gosh, you could spend very little and make a whole lot. Whereas in the past, it's sort the common, knowledge and the common discussion around it was like, well, we need this, because it has to be a quality visual product in order for it to make money. But then I think what we're seeing is this strange dichotomy now where it's like, okay, you can of course make stuff for social media and become an influencer, say, and make tons of money, or you could still go the traditional route. But I mean, to be honest, it kind of seems like the film industry is in this weird limbo state, and maybe we can get more into that too. But it's like, there's so many different verticals now, whereas in the past you sort of aspired to, I'm going to go
television
work in
or
TV.
film.
I'm going to go work, in the Hollywood industry, or maybe produce live
music videos
events, or different things that are maybe not to that scale or whatever. So now it's just the whole thing's been kind of blown up, and we're all going, okay,
right,
kind of pick your path. So yeah,
and you can change whenever you want.
Yeah, and I feel like I've had to change multiple times, partly out of necessity, but then partly out of like, what's around that corner if I just pursue that direction. And in the past it was like, I want to make documentaries, I want to do National Geographic type stuff, right? Like I had those kinds of ambitions when I started, and those changed for various reasons since then. But I think in a way it's
feel like a career reset anymore. It used to be a career reset anytime you kind of change those verticals, and now you can be fluid between them a lot more easily.
And potentially do multiple if you play your cards right and everything. So yeah, it's super interesting.
I feel like the big difference, the area where Hollywood still has a lockdown, is in specializing. Like if you are a top tier in Hollywood, you also probably do one thing and you do it really freaking well, which is not really the way the rest of the world is going to work. So if you are in generalist, or even a generalist for commercial video or YouTube, or even like music videos, or corporate or live events, and sort of like those things, like the need and ability to have such a wide variety of things that you can do, like that's such a huge selling point there. And Hollywood's the only place where being a generalist isn't really that big of a selling point. Everywhere else, it's so great to be able to have all the skill sets.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll always be a place for people who want to specialize, and nothing wrong with it. But then I'm curious what the future of that though, right? Like you niche down that specific, are you going to be able to put food on the table? I don't know. That would be
and so much of that comes down to being in the right place at the right time and networking. And if you're not good at networking, you better hope you're literally the best in the world. Where people are coming to you.
Here's to be the best, or trying. Dude, yeah. I mean, so you have, I know you've spent a lot of time directing other creatives and, bringing people together, to create films or do design work and campaigns. And so for you, when you vet creatives and when you look at, assembling a team to make something, are you looking for quality? Are you looking for good soft skills, maybe a combination of the both? And I guess at the end of the day, how would you define quality when you see it, or quality when you experience it?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it is always going to be the context of what you're hiring for. So if I'm hiring like an actual staff person for a team, I care way more about will they be a good team member. And, I want a baseline of, yes, they can do the job. I don't want to have to teach someone how to make films if I'm hiring them as a filmmaker or a film director. So, I'm not going to hire someone who has only done 2 or 3 small projects that are all student level versus someone else who can actually like do the job, because I don't have time to babysit. But assuming that skills are at least somewhat equal, they can get better at what they do under like my direction or my film. If I'm the creative director and I've got a really good film director, like they can learn from him. I care way more about like, I don't know if you've ever read like Patrick Lencioni, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, or Ideal Team Player, but like the humble, hungry, smart. Like, are they hungry to learn? Do they want to work hard? Are they humble? Like, are they just a total? I think he actually uses the word jackass repeatedly in that book for like you don't want to hire somebody who's a jackass because you don't want to work with that kind of person. And then are they smart? Like, are they socially smart? It's not book smart. It's like, do they know how to apologize? Do they know how to deal with conflict? Do they own their own stuff? Do they treat other people who are beneath them well, or are they just total jerks about it? Like, so I valued those things the most when I was working with a team and hiring someone to actually be on staff for me. But my designers, most of my designers were freelancers, and so that was less of a thing. As long as they were pleasant and weren't super flaky, they didn't need to be a team member for the design things. For them, it was really like, like how well can they take direction, what is their quality, what is their skill set, and then just can they what's the word? Can they produce what I need them to? So like a lot of times it's about proven work ultimately for those sorts of things. So you were asking like what is quality, and a certain level of that is like it when you see it, and there's also going to be like a taste level too. Like the difference between like a brand new person out of college and then someone who's been doing it for a while, like you can tell the difference between those things very, very easily. But then when you go from someone who's been doing it for a while to someone who's like really, really good, the differences may be more intangible. Like that the super veteran, one of the best in the field, their work is amazing and better than this other person's work, but you may not be able to point out exactly what it is about it. It's those intangible.
It's like the nuances
when you see it,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh man, it's not just that they have good composition and they know how to use white space and their font pairings are great. It's they do the small details. The concept comes together better. They have great use of it's all of the pieces together are what makes the truly great quality.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question or if you
No,
have more
for
kind of
sure.
along that vein.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think kind of even tracking back to when you have creatives who maybe are very skilled, maybe bring a lot to the table when it comes to producing something, but their people skills are suffering, or maybe they're not the most social. And, what would you say to people who maybe have the skills, they have the confidence, they love what they do, but when it comes to relationships and when it comes to dealing with other people, maybe it's not like they might say about themselves like, oh, I'm not like very social, I'm like kind of, I
Sure.
like to keep to myself, or whatever. What would you say to people like that when it comes to trying to move forward in their career too?
It's not about social skills. I mean, you can have those people who are hyper extroverted. It's about people smarts. And it really comes down to that, like, you can have a super introverted, very quiet person who is amazing to work with, and you can have a very social person who is a blast to hang out with, but you're like, I never want to work with them again because it is either an enormous pain or the worst of them comes out in that creative process situation. So, they might be a blast and hilarious when you talk with them but then you work with them and they're just a diva and they want everything their way, or they have to have, they have to be the leader and they can't be, like the co-manager or the assistant to the manager, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like they don't work under people well. So if they're not the boss, they're just a disaster to work with. So I would say, like, I mean, pick some sort of like leadership book about, like, especially if you find a good one about, hiring, how to hire well, pay attention to what people are looking for. And that's a good way to like figure out, okay, it's not about, I don't have to be an extrovert and a super best fast talker or whatever. It's, like, am I going to be someone that people enjoy working with? Because if my skills are solid and I'm a joy to work with, I'm going to end up getting more work. That's what it ultimately comes down to. If I'm the best in the work, or best around, and I'm just a-hole, you're not going to get called back, and you're constantly going to be having to find new clients. Whereas, every now and again, like, I know there's a guy that I've worked with for years and years. His name is Joe Cavazos. He is unbelievable designer. He's one of the best in the country. If you do any church stuff in design, there's a company called Sunday Social. Like, he runs Sunday Social, and he is just an unbelievable mix. Yeah. So just this unbelievable mix of, he's super, super talented. He's super humble, and he's just a blast to work with. Like, yes, you do find unicorns like that. There's another one that comes to mind. His name is James Graves. He has an Instagram called Visual Jam, so you should definitely check it out. He has this beautiful illustration style. So, like, yeah, I mean, those sorts of people, they definitely come up. But they are rare enough where, if you find one, latch onto them if you because you just love collaborating with them. But, sometimes you need someone who does solid work, but they are fun to work with, is much better than the other way around. That's what's going to get you a repeat client.
That's kind of, to me, how I see living your life like it's a marathon and not like it's a sprint. Because when you realize that you're working with people, you're working with people with different personalities and different goals and all these things. Yeah, you don't want to just, produce something and focus on the production. It's the people you work with that ultimately carry you along too. Like in that way you have to look at everything like you're a part of a team. No man is a solo operation as much as, you might be a solo freelancer, this or that. But I'm even finding in this season where I'm running my own business, like I'm barely doing anything by myself, because part of it is like you need a team if you're going to elevate your work, for one, but also if you want to have a network 10 years from now, if you want to have that sort of cross collaboration and build that over time, you have to be thinking future. You have to be thinking 5-10 years down the road, not just in the immediate, like this is what I'm doing right now,
Absolutely. So, I mean, I would just say for someone who doesn't or wants to get better at that stuff, like pick up whatever book you want, but I would recommend just Ideal Team Player by Patrick Lencioni, because it's a very simple framework, but it's very obvious of like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense for, like why this is the type of person that people would actually want to work with long term. And the things that apply there will help you whether you are applying for a job or you're just working with other collaborators on a freelance thing. It's gonna, if you can really focus on improve and being good in his 3 key areas, that humble, hungry, smart thing, it's going to be a great framework for you to just be someone that people always love to work with. And then you just keep brushing up on your creative skills, and then you've got the whole package.
I love that. Yeah. Well, and we can link that book as well. It'd be good for people to be able to find that. And maybe we could suggest a few others in the comments and everything. So, I mean, kind of in line with that, I think of creativity as twofold, because you have sort of people who obviously pursue a creative career, and then you have people that are just like naturally creative, and maybe they categorize what they do as passion projects, or maybe they consider themselves a fine artist. And of course, in fine art, I suppose it's sort of both together. But that space alone has its own complex sort of, lifestyle. But I mean, what are your thoughts as far as that goes? Do you think creatives should kind of put their creativity into 2 different buckets and sort of be like maybe nurture their fulfillment creatively versus, nurturing just a career and focusing solely on, say, client work and resume and pumping up their LinkedIn? Or like, how do you think people, I suppose, how should creatives stay fulfilled? Like, is there a way to approach that where they're not getting burnt out on just making stuff for the purpose of it, their own self-advancement?
I mean, that is absolutely something that I think every creative that I've worked with or talked to struggles with, is like, I do this for a living. I have to pump stuff out regularly on a consistent basis, and it has to be good, and it's exhausting. How do I not burn myself out? And I mean, I would say, part of it is just learning pacing and learning rhythms. There's a really good book called The Accidental Creative that talks about that. So another one that I would like recommend reading, of how do you pace yourself for consistently good output without burnout. And there's a bunch of other stuff in that book that's really good, but that's one of the things that he talks about, is how do you avoid those huge peaks and valleys of where you're the most brilliant creative person in the world and then everything you do is crap and you have no ideas. How do you take that curve, because you're always going to have that curve, but how do you squish those peaks and valleys down a little bit so there's either less time in your valleys or your valleys aren't as low, and so you can output.
We could call it creative compression for all the audio nerds.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go.
Slap a limiter on there, I don't know.
So that's a really helpful book for that type of stuff. But on like a personal level, having some sort of creative outlet, I think, is really important. So like, I don't do video or even design for fun, because it's work for me, and I enjoy it and I love it when I get to do it. But like for me, I bought a camera before I went to Japan. I was like, holy crap, I forgot how much I loved photography. And so like on my days off, I think I've hit every somewhat cool natural or architectural location in the Indianapolis, and I'm already out of spots. And so last time that I went out, I had to drive like an hour to another town to like find somewhere cool. And I just go take fun photos that I post them on Instagram, but I'm not going for any sort of like build a network or whatever. It's literally just something fun for me to do. I have fun taking the photos, and I have fun editing the photos, and I have zero expectations that anyone likes it. If they do, great, awesome. It's a joy, but like, that's my creative outlet. Like, my other creative outlet is nerdy, but we're creative, so I can be nerdy, is like D&D. I love world building and just like coming up with stuff. So like I have a group of friends, we've been playing for like D&D for like 10 years online.
Wow.
And when I get to run a campaign, I get to create all this like random stuff and pull pieces from my favorite books, and like that's another creative outlet for me. So find something that feeds you creatively, but it does not have to be your own personal craft. Now, some people do. Like I know I mentioned like James Graves and Joe Cavazos. They do design exercises. James will do fun stuff for his family, and he'll do these beautiful posters because he does a bunch of great illustration, but he also has a style that's very much his that he finds a lot of fun, and so he just loves exploring that style. Or Joe will challenge himself to do, like one art piece a day that has nothing to do with his normal day job. He just wants to like, hey, I'm going to give myself an hour and I'm going to do something that's super cool. And for him, it's what kind of like cool Photoshop techniques can I do in as quick, as short a period as possible. So, and have you seen like the pixel stretch was like a really big thing for a while, where you take like one line of pixels in Photoshop and like he was one of the ones that like kind of came up with the technique and pushed it forward, and Adobe did a feature on him, but that just came out of his design exercises, and he had a whole blast with it. He did a whole series of pixel stretch stuff.
I think it's cool when creatives are able to find maybe not even the whole craft that they are in 24/7, but maybe a little piece of it that they can sort of find that sort of area of play where you can just sort of experiment and it doesn't feel like work because you're maybe being so specific about what you're doing, or so you're kind of putting the blinders on and just giving yourself one little thing to do. That's a pretty interesting way to go about that.
Well, and wide open creativity is exhausting. So like, like creativity happens best when you put limits and you're solving a problem within a box. It's like think inside the box and make the box really small, so you have to be creative in how you solve whatever your problems are. And so, it's like, okay, I have 1 hour. My only materials are what I can find on Unsplash and can create from scratch in Photoshop. What can I do in an hour that looks super cool? And I want to do something that's sports-ish because that's what I was watching this morning. That's what inspired me. Or I want to do something that's architectural. Or I want to make it look 3D. Like, give yourself a goal and see how you can stretch yourself in whatever limits you have. Like, that's a good way just to stretch your own creativity on that. But no matter what, you got to find something that's feeding you creatively that is probably different or more narrow. It's either more narrow or it's completely different than whatever you're doing for your day job. Because otherwise, you're just doing the same thing over and over again. You're totally going to burn yourself out.
Do you think that creative fulfillment and stress management kind of have play together, or do you think it's important to also have outlets specifically just for like maybe de-stressing and sort of getting yourself out of, or I suppose refreshing yourself a little bit, right? Like, because I think creative fulfillment can be like maybe a cause of stress. But I mean, do you think, for some people, I suppose it could be relaxing to do exercises and do things, but maybe for others, I could imagine it could be complete escapism or something like that. I don't know. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I feel like that's a human question, not a creative question. Like we are, whether you do creative work or you're an architect or an accountant, like we're all whole people. So you got to find some way to Sabbath well. And Sabbath can't be doing house chores, right? It may not be on a Sunday, but like you got to find some time to rest. You got to figure out the things that fill you up. Are you a social person and you like, I get filled up when I'm around people and it energizes me and my battery is full after I've gone, I've got some guys tonight that I'm going to go hang out and we're going to go drink bourbon and chill with, right? Like I've got my bourbon crew and we go out once a month and we do that and that fills me up. I'm not crazy extrovert or I want 50 people around me, but I've got like my group of 5 other guys that I go hang out with and that fills me up. Or you got other people that like, I just want to sit on the couch and play video games for forever, or I just need my day off where I couch potato for a while and nobody talks to me and I can read my books or I can play video games or watch my movies and I'm just by myself and that's going to fill me up because I just need to decompress. Or I don't know, whatever it is. Like it's less about creative, it's more about just me as a person, what's going to help me refuel myself. So I feel like everyone needs some sort of creative outlet. But that creativity might be, I love decorating my home, or I love fashion, or, I love my fantasy football and I gotta nerd out on all the stats and stuff like that. And it's, that may not seem like a creative outlet, but it kind of is. Like you get to build your team and put it together and, solve it, whatever it is, home projects, DIY, take your pick. You got to find something that's going to fill you up, that's just there for the joy of it. If you don't have any hobbies, you're probably leaning into burnout and health, whether you realize it or not, regardless
really
of what you do for a living.
Yeah. So, I mean, was Japan, we can get into that a little bit. Here's the thing. All right. I just got to put this out there. Everybody's going to Japan, and I'm over here like, babe, when are we going to Japan? Are we going to go to Japan? Are we going to take our kids to Japan? It's kind of, I almost feel like there's this trend right now where just a lot of people are honing in on like, Japan's got so much to offer, and it's like this discovery thing going on right now. So, I mean, for you, like, how far back has your interest in going to Japan gone, and what did you kind of take away? Was there some element of just your human sort of like refreshment that you were looking for, or just the adventure? Like, just give me the lowdown.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like interest in Japan, I mean, I grew up in the era of Dragon Ball Z and anime explosion. So yes, I like love that, and I feel like every kid loves knights in armor or cowboys or ninjas or all three, right? So like, I loved ninjas and karate and samurai, and who doesn't love a good katana samurai sword fight and all that kind of stuff, even if you weren't into anime. So yes, I mean, growing up, I had that sort of stuff, but even as I've kind of grown out of that, I really grew into like, I love the natural beauty of Japan, and I have a Lego one because I will kill a real one, but I love bonsai trees, and the Japanese gardens in San Jose was like my favorite place to go to there. It was so beautiful, and they have one here in Indy, and it's tiny, and it makes my heart sad inside. So the
It's
interest
a
was
bonsai
always
garden.
there.
It itself is small. Yeah.
If they had one bonsai tree, I would be fine with that, but it didn't. It was just a very small.
Oh, come on.
It was a park that had like a pagoda, and they called it a Japanese garden. I was like, oh, well, sure, great, whatever, it's fine, close enough. For me, I was going through just a really hard season and just like personal life and home life, and I had from that, I had a big consulting project that I did come in, and I was like, you know what? I want to go do something. I want to go to Japan. Why do I had the ability to like go somewhere on my own. I didn't have to worry about bringing a whole family, paying for the kids and sort of that stuff, and I would never have been able to afford it and any of that at the time. So the ability to be like, okay, I could go by myself, I could explore, I could get some solitude and kind of get away from this really hard home situation and just find some peace for like my soul. That was why I decided I wanted to do it. I really kind of like planned my whole trip around kind of like just, if you like, Zen vibes. Like, I want to go to the coolest gardens. I want to go to forests and national parks. And yeah, I mean, I did Tokyo and I did Kyoto and I had my city time. But like, I also planned a trip to Kanazawa, which has, so in Japan, there's like these three, they call them perfect gardens, meaning that they are beautiful in every season of the year. No matter when you go, they're always great. And then the greatest of the three perfect gardens is called Kinroku, and it's in Kanazawa. And so like, that was my favorite place that I went to the whole time. It's the only day where I burned through all of my camera batteries, and I spent like 4 hours in this one place instead of kind of like hopping around the city, and it was gorgeous. And so like, I mean, for me, being a Christian, I went to a bunch of Buddhist temples, and it was beautiful and all that stuff. But like, anytime I went to a garden, it was like, okay, I'm going to put in my Dwell audio Bible, and I'm just going to do some like scripture meditation while I walk around and take gorgeous photos all day. And it was like healing for my soul. So I went to Japan to just kind of like spiritually rest and decompress and just kind of like be alone and reflect and just kind of like almost kind of like hit the reset button on like my energy level and my heart and my soul and just even like my brain of like, I got away from work and wrapped up everything I needed to before that. So, and then just kind of go have fun. It was a blast. So I saw a lot of beautiful spaces. I got to explore a lot by myself. Everything about Japan was incredible. I don't think I spent more than $22 on any meal, and yet I ate like a king the whole time because all of the food is delicious. I had the best burger of my life in Japan.
I was going to ask, because I see so many burger places out there on social media, and I'm going, is this the capital of the world of burgers? And I
only did one night.
The thing on burgers, but what's going on?
I only did one night of, I had 2 meals the whole time I was in Japan that weren't like Japanese food. And all of the rest of the food that I ate was some sort of like Japanese food, and all of the Japanese food, as expected, was amazing. And it's not like here in the U.S. where like you go to a Japanese restaurant. All of the different dishes that they have at a Japanese restaurant in the U.S. are separate restaurant styles. So like there's a tonkatsu place, there's a ramen place, there's a sushi place, there's a gosh, I can't even think. There's a tempura place. So, like, there's just like a different place for everything. And so I just had all the different types of Japanese food all the time, and it was amazing and tasty. But like, I only did I said two meals that weren't that weren't Japanese food, and one of them was this burger place called Sakura Burger in Nara, and it was so good. I want to say it was either Kobe or Wagyu beef, and it was so good and tasty and delicious, and it was amazing. But yes,
All right,
I don't know if there's
sure
a
to
huge
get
burger. Yeah, I don't know if there's a huge burger culture there, but that place was fantastic.
I mean, it kind of seems like they just do everything better.
Yeah, I mean, kind of, yes.
Public transit, I hear.
Dude, it was so easy.
Yeah.
Like, you could use your transit card to buy things from the vending machine, pay for the bus, pay for the train station, pay for the bullet train, pay for a bunch of restaurants, or like, and it was nationwide. It wasn't just like, it only works when you're in Tokyo or it only works when you're in Kyoto. You could use it pretty much everywhere. Like, a couple of the smaller towns, I couldn't use it as much, and so I had to have some cash, but that was very rare. All the large towns all use the same transit card, and Google Maps knows all the, like, between Google Maps and Google Translate, I had zero problems only knowing how to say, like, thank you and excuse me and my name is in Japanese. And that was pretty much all I had to worry about. It was so easy to be a tourist. It was my first time out of the country. I'd never been out of the country, and I went by myself to Japan for 2 weeks. And so I had zero problems. Everyone was so nice. Everyone says thank you and excuse me a million times. It was like, you just need to go. It's great. I loved it.
Yeah. Well, I'll be sure to get the old checklist from you on things to check out when I'm out there. Hopefully soon. We'll see. But yeah, dude, that's amazing. Did you, was there any sort of tidbits of inspiration that you sort of left with, maybe that you would bring back into your work life? Or would you say it solely was just like a sort of refreshment of the soul, and that's kind of what you took away from it?
I don't think that I had anything that I could take directly to my actual role at work, but I did walk away from, like all of the different temples and gardens and stuff they have with kind of like two thoughts, like for our country and for just like the American church, working in ministry of like, I mean, America does great with national parks. Don't get me wrong. It's amazing. But like everything in Japan was beautiful. You would have this like clearly not the best part of town, like not super nice houses, and they still had a beautiful tiny garden in their backyard. And the public spaces were gorgeous. Like everything in Japan was beautiful. Even the old, like the more rundown parts were still so well like cared for and like cultivated. So like just in general, America needs to up its game on more frequent beautiful spaces throughout the country. There's things that we do great.
Right,
nobody else has national parks like America does, but on the smaller and like quantity scale, everything was amazing. And then like on the church side, their places of worship were not these blank mega church, brick buildings that only kind of look good, but you were so constrained by budget. Like they had spaces for contemplation. Everything was really careful and intentional, and just like I know that like, a lot of the European church has declined, but like I missed when we put thought and beauty and effort into the spaces that we created, not just functionality.
I have the same feeling at times where, you look at architecture and you look at, the way people design spaces nowadays, and just how, and this is kind of from what I see, but also what you're saying now is like, what America seems to be not culturally promoting, or there isn't enough of a conversation around it, is like, why aren't we being careful enough about, every square inch of what we have right now? Like, I think there's almost this approach to, when it comes to designing even just the inside of your home, but like home construction, for example. I mean, you go around California and it's this cookie cutter, homes are like 3 feet apart from each other. you get all the real estate inside, but then even then you go inside houses, like the space isn't really used to its fullest extent. I guess like what's missing? Is it just maybe ignorance? Like, do people not realize the possibilities? Or, I mean, do you think there's just genuinely like a missing value that, maybe we once had in America, but now is just sort of like not really there?
I think minimalism has hurt us a little bit. I think that the economy is a big factor because it's really expensive, and so it's become a luxury to have good design, and so people don't feel like they can afford it, and so they don't invest in it. And then I would say just culturally, it's just not something that America has valued recently as far as you know what? Actually, no, I don't know that I would say that. That's hard.
I mean, in a way, it's like,
but
like national parks, like to your
I don't know
point.
that I have I don't know that I have an answer for that.
Yeah, it's tough because, I mean, I think part of it's like there's subcultures in America, and I mean, America's a huge continent, so there's
Yes.
different cities that have way different vibes and approaches. Like you have LA versus New York, you can go on all day about just, I mean, New York has all this history, and there's such a richness there. I mean, I grew up in New England, so I remember walking the streets of Boston, and you would drive some of those streets that are still cobblestone, and then you look at these old churches, and then you drive all the way across the country, and it almost in a way progressively gets more, I suppose, function over form. It's more about like just getting the job done, but not necessarily thinking through, the human component to things like architecture and things like, creating spaces for people. And I think the one hilarious thing to me is like, I feel like there's this stereotype of coffee shops being this like domain for hipster people to just be hipster, and like but I think there's something to it where it's like there's one thing that those spaces are doing that other places are not, and it's this hospitality, and it's this fact of like, oh, I can actually like have a good beverage and not pay a fortune and sit down and potentially have community, and there's like multiple things that it's doing at the same time. Whereas
the space has been built with intentionality for that.
Yeah, and of course there's like this template that's maybe overused. I mean, you have the green plants against the rustic brick, and you have sort of these like stereotypes. But I still think there's a reason why coffee shops are a place that so many people love. Is it gives
it's the Starbucks third home concept, right?
Yeah.
Like that's why they were revolutionary, not because their coffee is all that particularly great, but they basically invented the third home idea, or the third place, I think is what it's called, the third place.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, so we can segue from that because I'm really curious to get your take on this too, while we still have some time, and kind of cover AI because I mean, even since we've met, I mean, when I first met you, AI wasn't really talked about in terms of the creative space at all. You might have had some interesting tools
Science
that were
fiction-y.
Yeah, and maybe at best you had good plugins for, say, 3D rendering and modeling and animation or whatever. But now you have AI, which is just going nuts right now, and you have Adobe with some of their plugins. You have I mean, you name it, there's AI is kind of in every main program in some way. But like, what's your take on the usefulness of it at the stage it's at right now? Have you been utilizing it at all, or anybody you work with been utilizing it? And kind of what's your first impression if you're just kind of looking at what's being thrown out there right now?
I think it is an incredibly useful tool. So you talk about like the generative fill in like Photoshop or Lightroom and things like that. Like, what a dream that is. To be able to like, I don't want to have to spend hours clone stamping this out. I know how to do it, but I just don't want to because it's just not a good use of my time as a creative, right? Like, that is like the easiest and best. Like, this is where AI is brilliant. And really, like, in my mind, in an ideal world, that's what everyone wants AI to be. It's not taking over the creativity. It's making more time, room, and space for creativity. So I'm not sitting there photoshopping out wires from an architecture shot or trying to get this one awkward guy who's picking his nose out of there, but I can't match the brick pattern.
That was the struggle we had to go through, Brand, because I feel like there is this new sort of, I mean, anyone who was born after 2000, and I'm still mind blown they're an adult. I'm like, these people don't know the pain of rotoscoping or close
Yes,
stamping,
it's the worst.
even in video, especially, right? And then now you
Right.
have content aware. I just updated After Effects today. Content aware fill for video is like fully
Yeah, it's
deployed now.
amazing.
Like, it's
great.
beyond what it was 6 months ago, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, I didn't.
So
have
like
this.
that's AI at its best is when it is taking the tedium out of creativity and letting you focus on the parts that you enjoy the most. So like I think that's fantastic. The mid-range stuff is like the Adobe Firefly, like, hey, we're going to generate a background that you typed up type stuff. I mean, I think there's usefulness. I think that's going to be more useful in spaces where you have to pump stuff out quick. And so it's another tool, but I think that, like eventually you're going to run into everything looks the same. And I mean, these days it's pretty easy to pick out a lot of AI art just because it's so obvious, because it's pulling from the same teaching sources, right? Like it's not actually making anything; it's just remixing things brilliantly, but it's just remixing stuff over and over again. And it's just really it's like Google Kung Fu. How great of a prompt can you put in? Just like it was like how great of a search combination can you put in to get exactly what you wanted when you were doing research. And then like I don't know, but I think that probably call this more on the American value downside is like Americans love productivity more than in a lot of other cultures. And so the fact that you can do so much with AI and it's passable, that's where a lot of creatives are really going to end up getting hurt because, an agency can be like, we're just going to use AI for our headshots and we're not going to bother bringing in a photographer to do something cool or even coming up with a cool way that we want our headshots to be. Like, just feed us a couple photos of you from your iPhone a couple, weeks ago and we'll do headshots for you automatically out of AI. Or
crazy.
Yeah, I don't really want to have to make cool art or find cool art for our walls and whatnot. Let's just have AI come up with a couple of random things that we can toss on the wall and we'll call it good, rather than actually like curating a space and things like that. And then you have artists that aren't able to sell their actual, like, they put thought and energy into that, and it's just what could I generate on what's it called, Midjourney or Mindjourney? I can't remember what the
you got Midjourney, you got Dolly, you got other
exactly
stuff.
Right. Like I mean, those are cool. I have found them more useful as research and like ideation tools, where if I can't find the example of something I'm trying to put in a mood board, sure, I might use that once or twice and be like, hey, make me a cool illustration in the style of Saw Bass, but it's a picture of a semi truck, right? I mean, I've never actually searched for that, but I'm just coming up with stuff in my head. But like, yeah, like you could type in some prompts and get some decent and keep tweaking until you're not going to get something that's actually going to be usable from a design standpoint, but you can get an idea across a little bit easier if you don't have the skills yourself. So great tool for creative directors as long as they use it as a tool, not a replacement for a person.
I think that's definitely. Yeah, go ahead.
My fear is on a corporate level that it's just going to be like, well, what could AI create us so we don't have to pay someone to do it? And that's really sad.
It is kind of happening,
Yeah, you have your people that are like if you look at Peter Voth, I think is this really super well-known illustrator, or you've got someone whose photography is that they've narrowed in, they have their niche in their style. Personal style, I think, is still going to trump what AI could create, because you're going to go to that person for that style. So that's always going to be a safe space. And I think having that mix of I can do anything, and so like if the work's coming in and it's not in my style, I can still take on the job like that, but I have my style that people also come to me for that no one else can replicate. That's I think is going to be the sweet spot moving forward to combat AI, because AI is always going to be generic. So if you are the king of this style and you know that style sells, you're always going to be sought after for that. And you just have to have enough general skills to fill in the gaps when you don't have projects that do that, until you are well known enough where you do have an overabundance of work, people coming in for that specifically.
Yeah, and I do think, I mean, there's a lot of fear, or I suppose people kind of tote fear about AI in the creative space, because it's like there is this kind of unknown of like how good is it going to get? Like, is it going to get to a point where people are making feature films? Like you see that now with the generative video, where people are going, okay, I can prompt a whole 45-minute, 2-hour movie, I suppose, if they really want it.
Yeah, but it's also probably terrible. Like,
that's the question, is like people are going, it doesn't look good now, but then of course, like, how is this going to look in 2 years? I
Right.
don't know. I mean, and then the question then would be, are they going to even be able to differentiate, their work? Like, kind of to your point, it's like, style
I
is
think
kind of that, almost that unspoken, like the nuanced
there's always going
thing,
to be a
right?
place for things that have a human element to them, and I don't think
Yeah.
AI is going to ever be able to do that in a novel way. It might be able to copy and clone something existing, which is
Hmm.
going to put it like a B tier Amazon, cheaply produced show. Sure, like that type of work will probably go away, but the actual like art side requires too much human intuition. I don't think that's going to go anywhere.
What do you feel like, maybe like to your point, it's kind of like there's, when you go back to quality and how you see quality, like there's this unspoken sort of thing that you can't quite necessarily articulate. When it comes to like, how do you know? I mean, say AI was as good as, visually, someone, it can make just as high quality a rendering or high quality a product with the right
Hmm.
prompt or whatever versus a human. Um, I mean, what do you think is human intuition when it comes to like when you see something? And maybe that's like storytelling, maybe when you watch a good movie, like how do you know the human intuition, or maybe how can you get a gauge of like, oh, okay, this wasn't, you know, built by robots. This was actually like a
Sure.
human being making something. Does that question make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I would say a lot of it's going to be emotional connection. So, like, does this ring true to me? Right? Somehow,
Mm.
something about it's going to connect with you on a conceptual level, and AI is not going to be able to fake the conceptual level because the conception, when something's AI generated, is coming from what prompts are being put it in. So that part is always going to have a human element to it. If
Mm.
you want me to like make me, I could put in some prompt for like make me a poster that looks like this. I'm still having to tell it what I want the poster to be of, which means I have a concept in my head of what I think is going to connect with someone. So at least for, if you will, like art directors and writers and things like that, there's a little bit of safety net in that of like, at least right now, like I can tell AI to write me a short script about something, but I still have to tell it what to write the script about, and I have to know that, oh, this topic is going to be worthwhile, right?
Hmm.
So a little bit of safety on kind of like the
The
conceptual side of
conceptual side
things.
is where you get, at least that's
Yeah.
the cornerstone of all of it. Yeah.
But on the, even on the like art, like the actual like creation, your hard skills of designing or painting or illustrating or filming or editing and things like that, like, I mean, I think like the ability that AI can edit a podcast for you really quick, to cut back and forth between two people talking. Yeah, I mean, that's great. That's, does that put some people out of a job? Probably, and that's unfortunate. But also, like, I don't think that's going to completely put them out of a job. They just might have to shift or pivot or find their selling point for what they're going to be able to offer that AI can't.
Yeah.
But, like AI editing isn't going to edit a piece as beautifully as like the movie. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but City of God's editing is unbelievable.
Mm.
Highly recommend it. Also shot cross process like Man on Fire, and it's about like Brazilian gangs. It's actually a true story, and it's fantastic. I think I talked about Man on Fire being in Brazil, and I was getting that confused. That's set in Mexico City.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, City of God is about these like Brazilian gangs and
Mm.
outside of Rio de Janeiro, and it's actually based on a true story. And the editing that is like we study the editing of that in film school, and it's such a good movie. And like AI is not going to be able to do that because there's too much like kind of like human intuition that it's not able to replicate. It's too dehumanized and too robotic. I mean, could it eventually get that way? Maybe. I don't know. That's sci-fi level stuff. I don't expect it anytime soon. And by then we'll probably be in those Wall-E floating chairs just watching stuff all the time anyway.
Drinking your slushy, just hoping for the best.
Yep. But I think that it's the middle, the low, and the low mid, I would say, that's going to get hurt the most, right? And so if you can find something that's going to stand out and sell it as a little bit more of a premium product, that's where you're going to stay in a safe space. So whether that's defining a style or, focusing on a specific genre, like I am the guy for getting comedic timing right in short form content, right? Like AI is not going to really, I mean, if you've ever heard AI tell jokes, they're either regurgitated jokes that a person came up with or they're just awful.
Yeah.
Like it takes, a machine doesn't really going to know what's funny because it's not a formula. They're just
Right.
copying something or Yeah, anyway. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think that like knowing your niche, whether that's a skill set or a style or a genre or whatever, that's what's going to help you the most. And the best, the human element of that is what's going to trump it. So find what human element you're best at.
And I feel like to the credit of any creative that's, trying to be better, I mean, that's just part of that's just the name of the game anyway. It's like, how do I
Yeah.
excel beyond, maybe what we could call the grunt work. I mean, the grunt work is and where anybody would start. And of course, I guess what
Yeah.
AI is doing is making it easier to do that. So it's, if
Absolutely.
anything, just leveling the playing field to be like, all right, we all know
You
that
actually
these things
have to
are out
work on
here.
your craft.
You have to just figure out what you're going to do
Yeah.
to stand out, figure out what value you're bringing, whether that's to clients or to just audiences or whatever. So in a way, I think that is actually a good thing because you're leveling the playing field. You're getting everyone to a place where the grunt work isn't the problem. The problem is, to your point, like our concepts strong, our decisions strong, and that's what I think is going to be a differentiator for sure. Is like, are you a good decision maker? Do you understand the nuances of how people perceive, good work and how people
Whatever it is
are
you're
told
creating.
stories?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I gave you a thumbs up there. I don't know if you see that.
Exciting.
Nice. So there you go. That's AI probably. You do the double thumbs up.
Yeah. I think I turned my
Boom.
reactions off. Oh,
I'm gonna leave them
fancy.
on because you never know. I might give you a double thumbs up and fireworks start. So, yeah, that's great, man. Yeah, I have a few movies to take away now that I want to watch. I got them on a nice little list here, so I'm excited to dive into those.
I think the only other final thought I have on
Yeah.
that is I think that which we didn't dive into, and I don't have enough thoughts on it, but I think the larger problem isn't going to be with AI isn't going to be replacing people. It's IP issues. What actually is the value of an idea? What are you allowed to copy? Like that's a whole world that I don't have any sort of educated opinion on, but that's where I see the larger issues that we're going to continue to face. People can overcome the work skill set, tool set stuff. I think that's going to be a lot easier to manage than the intellectual property stuff.
Well, because a lot of the trends on social media are like, people maybe clipping other people's work to sort of make an observational comment, but then you're asking yourself, like, do they really deserve to get all the platform and all the credit for that? And then it's like,
Right.
imitation is the best form of flattery. But I guess, borrowing somebody's work and then maybe just having a funny joke to make about it, and then that makes you a viral sensation. It's a crazy world we're in because, yeah, in the past, that probably would have been frowned upon. But now you have this Instagram reel culture of like, it's okay for somebody to go viral making a comment on somebody's video, like fail video or whatever. And yeah, it's like, where do you draw the line between stealing and rightfully borrowing,
Okay.
It's gonna be a
Have
tough
you
one.
ever heard the full quote of that though? The imitation is the sincerest form of flattery.
Hit me with it.
Because the full quote is imitation is the sincerest form of flattery that mediocrity can pay to greatness.
Dang.
So I feel like that's an important. It's an Oscar Wilde quote. I couldn't remember who said it. I had to Google it, but like, it's an Oscar Wilde quote that like it is way better, and I think should give, like creative type people a little bit more confidence hearing that, and also maybe give you a thought before you just go out and steal something. Like if you want to be mediocre, then imitate. Now there's that other quote of like. Good artists copy, great artists steal. And the idea behind stealing isn't actually stealing somebody's work. It's stealing the core concepts of it and making it your own. Like when you steal, if you are actually stealing somebody's wallet and you get away with it, it is now your wallet, so to speak, right? Like you have ownership and possession of it in a way that person doesn't have anymore. And it's the same thing with good creativity and idea. Like a good artist is just going to copy what they see. A great artist is going to take what was great about it and then do their own thing with it. That then it becomes their idea. It's not that person's idea anymore.
Well, and that kind of takes having to understand how to reverse engineer what you see. And I think that's almost just the pursuit of knowledge, the pursuit of wisdom in a way, because what you're doing is you're not being just a consumer. Like so many of us are like bred to consume. And I think that's kind of where, if we're thinking about corporate larger interests, that's really ultimately what they don't necessarily care about nurturing this sort of like creative thinking or sort of self-guided thinking, and people aren't thinking, oh, I'm going to reverse engineer this ad that I just saw. But it's those
Right.
very few people who go, okay, how and why did I have that emotion after seeing this or whatever? Those are the people who quote steal, in the sense of like they understand that somebody made this, somebody had an intention behind this.
Mm-hmm.
How do I reverse engineer and study? And so it just takes that
Mm-hmm.
curiosity. And I think it's important for people to have a curiosity if they're going to, get out of just being a consumer minded person. And it's kind of hard, of course, when you're doom scrolling all day.
But I will also say, just for people who are like creatives professionally, there's nothing wrong with making something that's okay and you get paid for it and you provide for your family, right? Like you can do corporate work that isn't the greatest creative stuff in the world for your day job and then love doing your side photography that you do just for fun, and that's where you feel creatively fulfilled. Like, I mean, like you always want to get better at your craft, and that's really important. But we can put creativity on a pedestal often, and sometimes it's important. Like, hey, like my job is to pump out what the client wants, regardless of whether it's high art or not. And me performing that means that I solved their problem, and I, like provided for me or provided for my family, and like I got my paycheck, and that's what I needed out of it in this particular moment. So like it's that balance of the two. Like, do great work, always make yourself better, but if you end up having to just pump something out because that's what the client wants or that's what you have time to do and the client's happy with it, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, don't look down on yourself because you're not as creative as the creative director at Nike, or you're doing a corporate video for a bank. I've done many corporate videos for banks, and I had fun doing them, and they weren't the most amazing thing in the world, but like I learned something out of it, and they were super happy with it, and it was a good job, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. And yeah, you got to have a balance between two, because you got to put food on the table. And I think if you have it as a creativity, as a career at all, then you got to be able to wear almost like a different hat depending on what you're doing. You can always
If
have
you
a
let
little bit of one other hat on there.
If you let high art or imposter syndrome, either side of that, cripple you where you're not actually putting out work, you're not doing anyone a favor.
Yeah, you got to be doing something.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. No, that's great, man. I know we're hitting at about an hour, so I mean, we can wrap things up unless you have any final thoughts on just, if you're looking back at our 1 hour conversation here. Does anything you want to leave with fellow creatives as far as like an encouragement, or any ideas on as they look into the future, stuff they should be maybe thinking about?
I don't know. I feel like we could have had a whole nother conversation about the idea of what it looks like to lead creatives, because I'm okay. I'm solid at video. I'm an okay creative director from like a design standpoint. Like my skill set comes in if leading creatives is like herding cats, I'm a solid herder of cats. I'm a cat shepherd, right? That's like my big gifting. Like, and I feel like there's a whole nother conversation around that, but I don't even know where to start with that. But I feel like that might be something that like might be fun to explore in the future. But like I would say completely, totally random from that would be take care of yourself, find creative outlets so that you don't lose the joy of what you're doing. And then also, if you ever go to Japan, don't just bring your iPhone. Don't bring a DSLR because you're not going to want to carry it all around all the time. But find like a real camera, because everything is beautiful there and you're going to love taking photos. I think I took like 10,000 photos in Japan. So I know that's random and very specific advice, but like if you do love creative work at all and you don't bring some sort of nice camera to Japan with you, you're going to be like, why did I only bring my iPhone with me?
But it has to be a Fujifilm, so.
Well, I mean, that's what I saved up and bought because I freaking loved it. And it was the perfect camera. But it does not have to be a Fuji. Like I saw plenty of people that had like a pancake lens and a Sony camera, and they were taking gorgeous photos. But like, and yes, you could take beautiful photos with an iPhone, but the country is so photogenic. If you love photography at all, you're doing yourself a disservice not to take a nice camera with some sort of small, nice camera with you.
Yeah, I heard, because you do a lot of walking from what I've heard from other people.
I didn't take a single Uber or taxi or anything. I walked or took the train or bus everywhere. I think I went from an average like 15,000 steps a day to like 35,000 steps a day.
Dang.
And I loved it.
Did you wear through any boots or shoes there? You get a few blisters?
No, I brought a lot of foot care stuff with me. So I brought a bunch of Band-Aids and moleskin pads, and surprisingly, like, I know it sounds really gross, but if you just buy like corn protectors on Amazon, they're like, it's like a really thick foam with a hole in the middle, and it's got adhesive on one side, and it's meant if you have like a corn, but you can just stick that where a blister's forming, and it doesn't bother the blister, and it keeps the blister from going any further. Honestly, I thought better than moleskin does, because it reduces friction and reduces and gives you some padding. So there's your
that might
Japan
be just
travel
as
tip.
important as the camera tip.
Yes. Corn protectors on Amazon. You can get a sheet of them for like $3. They are very squishy, and they are self-adhesive, and they're amazing. Bring
If
those
that's
with
the
you.
one thing that somebody took away from this, I'm happy.
Yes. Bring good foot care with you to Japan,
Yeah,
because you're going to
just take
walk
care
a
of your
million
feet, y'all.
miles. Yeah. It's like Forrest Gump. Do you change your socks? Wasn't that what like Lieutenant Dan had?
And I
He was
just
obsessed
started
with
running.
socks.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You don't need to bring a bunch of socks. Well, I mean, you do need socks in Japan, but you don't need to bring fresh socks with you all the time. But you should bring some good foot care, because you're going to walk a million miles
Done. Tip of
and
the
love
day
every
right
minute
there.
of it, and you're not going to want to
Yeah.
stop.
I'm ready to breathe the air out there, man. I'll hit you up.
So nice.
When I book my
Yeah.
tickets, I'll hit you up. I'll let you know what I'm doing.
Deal.
Dude. Well, let's plan a part 2, because I would love to dive into the leading creatives and kind of more of like your experience as a creative director.
Yeah.
But we can sign it off for now and keep people guessing. Like, what's part 2 gonna feel like? You know, let's stay tuned, right?
I love it. I'm down.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Well, thanks, Aaron. Appreciate you, man. And just glad we can make it happen today. And dude, you're the first guest of the Make Stuff podcast, so congratulations.
I'm sorry, but also this was fun. So thanks, man. I really appreciate it.
Hey, maybe you'll be the second guest.
Maybe. Well, hopefully you can get some like slightly more like big name people in than me.
Hey,
but
you
it'll
know
be good
what?
stuff.
Dude, you got your own. You can find him at aaronwilliams.tv, and you know.
Don't go to that website.
He has a website.
Please don't go to that website. I do. I haven't updated it in like 6 years. Well, okay, I've added a couple projects, but like the photos on that website are from when I lived in California 6 years ago.
That's funny.
Please don't look at me. I've changed since
Okay,
then.
so don't look at the website, but it's fine.
No, that website doesn't exist.
It doesn't
Go.
exist.
Yeah, I don't even know. It doesn't exist.
You just takes it down before this goes live.
I'll leave it up. You can. I still have
Okay.
people, despite it not even being on my website anymore, or like live, like linked on my website. I still have people that like find my old color grading articles on my blog. So I'm leaving it
Hey.
up for posterity.
There you go. Hey, tried and true. If anyone wants to read a few articles, there you have it.
There you go.
Well, we'll save you for another episode here coming up, Eric, bro. And yeah, appreciate the talk.
Yeah. Thanks, Christian, man.
You got it.